estate planning 101. Phil, a couple weeks ago, did talk about wills, and this sort of ties into that. So a cost associated with settling an estate. Probate is 0.5% in the first 50,000, and it's 1.5% in any excess over 50,000.
Can you exactly what is it?
Okay, probate is when Phil's going to be the better expert, but once a will has been done, if it has to go through probate, you get a certificate that enables the executor to settle the estate.
Probate is court approval.
Sorry?
Probate is court approval.
Court approval. Not all wills have to be probated, but a lot of them do. Now, executor fees are anywhere between 0 to probably 5%. If the executor is also a benefactor of the estate, they probably are not going to be charging the estate anything. But if you're a professional executer, or there are other you've accounting fees, that's all going to go in the executor portion. Lawyer fees can be anywhere from 1 to 10%. We've had a couple of estate lawyers come into our office to speak, and of course we always ask them, how much does it cost to settle an estate? And the lawyers are actually very funny. They were sheepish, and they said, well, we look at the family and we look at the estate and we figure out how much we think we can charge them.
Great answer. Pretty much it.
Yeah, and so if you have an estate that has to go through probate, if you die intestate means without a will, your estate has to be probated. And it starts to add up, as you can see. Your total will be anywhere from 1.5% to 16.5% on your estate, and that doesn't even include your income or capital gains taxes. So the downside of probate, assets such as GICs can take 6 months to years to settle the estate, or to get the estate clearance certificate. The estate clearance certificate is essential for the executor to be able to actually distribute the assets. Otherwise, the executor could be held liable. A will can be contested. There is a need to calculate capital gains, and your will, once it's probated, becomes a matter of public record. So Johnny will find out what Sally got in the will. It's a matter of public record. There are ways to avoid that. So this is part of the presentation. It's called Disinherit the CRA and Clear Your Estate in 30 Days. So we're going to look at your income sources. For a lot of people, when you're retired, it's going to be your RSP, which changes over to a RIF when you're 71, and you start taking from it 72. People will have non-registered assets, which are assets not in an RSP and not in a TFSA. And then you've got your TFSA and your principal residence, because it has a direct beneficiary designation, and it is insured, meaning that your beneficiary will get the greater of 100% of the original amount or fair market value. Principal residence as well is going to be exempt from any capital gains. Your RSP is also a beneficiary designation, so it can escape probate. But when you start retiring, a lot of people will take money away. They have to take money from their RSPs, but they will take money from their non-registered, the TFSAs. What we would suggest is you really want to run down your RSPs as much as you can, because at death it is taxable as income. So a $100,000 RSP at death would lose about $37,000 in taxes. A $200,000 RSP, I think it's about 87.8. These are all rough numbers. And a $300,000 RSP would lose $134,000. So you want to make sure that as much goes to your beneficiaries as possible. What is a very good thing to have is a permanent life insurance policy. And a permanent life insurance policy builds up cash values. I really like whole life insurance, and Harlan and I will hopefully be able to do a presentation together, and we can talk more about that. I always suggest you take about 2% of your estate, like your RSPs, and invest in a whole life policy, because that will help you settle your estate. It also goes directly to your beneficiaries because it's a beneficiary. So it skips probate, it skips your estate taxes. Now I've been talking about this. Now your TFSA also has a beneficiary designation. You can make your beneficiary designation successor holder to your spouse or a beneficiary. There is a slight difference between the two when it comes to tax, and the difference between when the TFSA actually transfers over. Sorry, this is not working. I'll have to get a new one. Now, with your non-registered, as you start taking money from your non-registered, obviously you want to keep moving money up into your TFSA, because your TFSA is non-taxable. It moves over to your beneficiaries without any tax, except for the small difference between when when you pass away and when the TFSA actually moves over to your beneficiary. Your non-registered account has minimal taxes. It's going to be taxed to the person while they're alive, and then there's going to be virtually no taxes when they pass away. If the markets go down, which they do, we have just come out of a down market. 2015 was a bad market for Canada, and for those of you who think it was only because of oil, it wasn't. The U.S. hedgies and so-called smart money was absolutely determined that the Canadian real estate market was going to turn south the way it did in the U.S. in 2007-2008. So what they did is they shorted the Canadian market. Canadian market's really easy to short. They shorted the banks. They shorted everything that they could. And what they've been doing now is capitulating. They didn't realize that our financial system, when it comes to housing, was very different than the U.S. in 2007. So the capitulation is not just because oil is moving up. Thank you. It is because of other external forces. Now, in bad markets, you can access the cash values in your insurance policy. So when you have a permanent insurance policy, especially whole life, it builds up cash values. So when markets go down, what you can do is you can take money from your insurance policy. It's not going to make the insurance policy collapse. You can actually access the cash values in your insurance policies, and you can leave your investments in your TFSA or your non-registered alone while the markets go back, because they will recover again, and then you can start taking money from there. So the key is you want to take money from your RSP, you want to build up your non-registered and your TFSAs, and when we pass away, I'm going to say if, I'm still thinking my science fiction days when we are all going to live forever. When you pass away, your state, if you have guaranteed investment funds, if you have life insurance policy, TFSA, they go to your beneficiary, bypass probate, bypass estate taxes.
Just a quick question. Why have such diversity? Why not put everything into one thing that's going to work for you?
Well, the RSP, as you're working, enables you to shelter money from tax and allows it to grow money. And so the idea is that you build up your RSP when you're in high tax years, and then when you're in lower tax years, you start pulling money out of your
Would you have like a TFSA and a GIF?
You should have. I think you should have everything. At the very minimum, you should have both an RSP and a TFSA.
When one isn't optimal, the other one might be.
Right, and you can have different assets. And also, I think a very important asset class is permanent insurance. And I think that is, sorry.
Is there a maximum you can put in the TFSA?
Right now, the maximum contribution is $46,500. It's determined by the government. Right now, it's $5,500 a year. Last year, it was $10,000. It started off at $5,000. But yes, so I have clients that are pulling money out of their RIFs. They don't need the money, so they're putting it right into their TFSA. It goes directly in. Thank you very much. Sorry there were no time for more questions.
Wow.